We love Zencaster because it allows us to record the audio for our podcast and create the video segments we use for our weekly Sister Scoop episodes. Zencaster has helped us make content capture simple.
It's now super easy to record a podcast with Zencaster. Log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests, and feel a sense of zen knowing Zencaster's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable.
If you've thought about podcasting before and realized that you need a lot of different tools and services, those days are over. With Zencaster's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast in one place and distribute it to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations.
Just go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code SistersAssembled, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencaster paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experiences we do for all of our podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.
Katie and I are always hungry, and one snack we both love is beef jerky. That's why we're so excited to tell you about one of our favorite jerky brands, Matt Hat Jerky.
Matt Hat's delicious taste makes it a great snack, and the variety of flavors, including original, black truffle, and my personal favorite, roasted garlic, means there's a flavor for everyone. Plus, it's local to the area where we grew up in, which we just love.
Use the link in the show notes below to get some Matt Hat Jerky for yourself, and make sure to use our coupon code SistersAssembled for 10% off. Hello and welcome to Sisters Assembled, your home for all things MCU. And we've been having some fun talking about Wonder Man, his future, and last week doing some of the Doomsday deep dives and theories around the teasers. But it is time for us to return to our replay series with the 4th episode of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which, if you all remember anything about the 4th episode, let me tell you, you remember the 4th episode. One of the most iconic images of the new saga, and not iconic in a good way, comes from this episode. So, without any other intro here, because there's a lot to talk about, I'm going to toss it over to Katie.
I feel like I, by default, need to start at the end.
Yeah, there's nowhere else to start.
I don't really feel like this is one that we can go almost like throughout the episode to discuss. I need everybody to understand part of the ability to do these replays, and this is the last one for us specifically from the MCU. Obviously, there's other options for us to do with like X-Men stuff, but part of this is because we were not a podcast when this content was coming out. This was the very last piece of content that we were not a podcast for. But let me tell you guys, I will never forget talking about this with Taylor.
Yeah.
This was one of those moments. And now, guys, I let's just reset here. If you're newer here and you don't listen to us often, we are Cap girlies in and out.
Yes.
Front, back, we are for Cap, Team Cap. I mean, T is obviously like, that's her man. Bucky's mine. But regardless, Captain America.
Whether it's Steve or Sam.
We are 100% Captain America fans. So it is so hard, even all these years later, going to that final scene of seeing that shield bloodied for the first time ever. Because we've never seen that before. And I still remember us sitting there watching it and just being like, what is going on right now? Like, I still remember our reaction just being so absolutely like almost like I think in shock.
Yeah.
And even to this day, like knowing it was coming, and I still was like, I can't fathom watching this again, let alone obviously watching Sam and Bucky's reaction, especially Bucky's reaction, who was pretty much there since that shield has been forged, and watched it for the first time be bloodied in front of him.
Katie just gave you a rundown of what it was like for us the first time. Shock, horror, dismay, anger, all of the emotions. This time, when I knew it was coming, I still sat in front of my computer and I just had my hands over my mouth. 5 years later, like I still am just, the pain doesn't go away. And I think this episode is so powerful there's so many good conversations. There's so many things to pick out and to analyze, and we'll do our best to do that. But so much of that is just almost overshadowed by that final shot and what that final shot represents. What it represents to the two men standing there, one of which will go on to hold the shield, the other of which, to Katie's point, stood by the man, well, to the best of his ability, stood by the man who held that shield until he could no longer do that, and then did it again until he could no longer do that. It has so much meaning to those two men, but it has a whole separate set of meanings to the fans and then to the people of the MCU, which we'll definitely get into the conversations around that symbolism because it was a big discussion in this episode. But to end the episode that way, I mean, this episode reminded me so much of why I couldn't stand John Walker.
Yep.
But there's a great conversation between him and Lamar that we will talk about because I didn't remember that conversation, and I think that conversation is so interesting. But he's awful. He's awful in this episode. You see the worst of him in this episode, and then he does the unthinkable. And I just, yeah, it's tough to watch that, to watch the shield be used in that way to murder someone is, I mean, it changes what that shield means for everyone forever, no matter what.
It does. And it's hard because if you guys have listened really to the past episodes in relation to this specific show when we're doing the replay, we kind of go through all the emotions with John Walker.
Yeah.
We're like at the beginning, we're like, I don't remember kind of being okay with him, like kind of chilling. And then by the third episode, we're like, oh, yeah, I can kind of see him starting to be like a bit of a butthole. We're not really his biggest fans, but like he's not awful. And the irony in this one is this is the one that you really do hit that like, oh my God, you're the worst human being to ever walk the earth.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it comes down to he can be a dislikable character. And that's okay. Like I was managing with him in the third episode. Like not a fan of you, but like you're fine.
Yeah.
It's in this moment I think he crosses this point of no return for the both as like a viewer and also in universe.
Yeah.
Like this is the moment obviously in the literal MCU universe that he crosses that point that completely ruins the rest of his life essentially.
Yeah.
Sets him up on a path that he is just it is not the Captain America path anymore. Let's say that. Especially in the eyes of the people. But then even in the eyes of like a fan watching this is that moment because if there's one thing you don't do, it's disgrace a symbol that has meant so much to fans all of this time.
Yeah.
And it could be multiple different symbols. I mean, we've had so many. I mean, I still think about Hela sitting here taking out Mjolnir
Yeah.
within the first 10 minutes of Thor Ragnarok. And all of us were like, what just happened?
Yeah.
Like, we knew she didn't come to play in that moment. And we were like, where is this movie going? This to me is that moment in a very different way, but this is the same type of moment of showing you the type of character this person is. And this is truly his no point of return moment.
Yeah. And I think what you brought up with the Hela reference is so good because I think like this moment, it is a point where everything changes, right?
Yes.
Without Mjolnir, it sends Thor on a very different journey. That hammer is almost a comfort blanket to him. It's something that he felt he needed, and it was a crutch.
Yes.
And that whole film is about him learning to not need that crutch anymore, learning to trust in his own abilities, his own powers. And then you think about what sullying the shield means, right? It is this changing of the guard between what the shield meant under Steve and now the work that Sam is going to have to do to rebuild the integrity of the symbolism of the shield because of the damage that John Walker has done on such a grand scale. And by grand scale, I mean he does it very publicly. He does it, not that murder is ever okay. So let's just get that, clarified.
Right, of course.
But to have done what he did then in a public square where people are taking video, where they are posting, where they are sharing this footage from 50 different angles, right? That is just a whole different level then of how the shield is changing in its symbolism. And that means Sam's job is so much harder to be able to add credibility back, add a level of respect back to it. And I think that's why Sam's speech at the end, his monologue in the final episode, is so important. It's one of the many reasons why it's so important, because he has to do that work then to reestablish that Captain America stands for something positive. It's not a symbol to use as a carte blanche blank check to do whatever you want, which is how John was using it. You know, John felt, I'm Captain America, I can murder and I don't have consequences. I mean, I think he knew, but especially, you know, after it happened, but in the moment he's so enraged. He's Captain America, he can do whatever he wants, right? And that's the vibe you're getting from him all episode. And Sam then has to kind of rein it back in. And I think that's kind of his part of his journey, not only in taking up the shield for the rest of the show, but then in establishing what he's going to do as Captain America and why that is much more aligned with Steve's version and how Steve wanted to symbolize hope and things like that than John's version.
Well, and hot take here, that's not probably a hot take, but John is representing, unfortunately, how I think a lot of people from the outside view America.
Correct.
Definitely that vibe of like generally the aggressors in a lot of situations kind of going in and feeling that there aren't really consequences to the actions that are taken as a country at times, and then we kind of just leave.
Yep.
And leave behind, and a lot of damage. And so I think he is very much representing the reality a lot of times of what it has looked like, especially from an outsider's perspective, and even from living here, like our history and things of that nature. Like, I'm not going to sit here and not say that I know our history. A history buffs on this podcast right here, guys. We did a push. We did it. But that's truly what he is kind of symbolizing in these moments. And on the flip side of that, I mean, you do have Steve, who, as the original Captain America, represented kind of that more original American dream.
Mm-hmm.
Versus then you have Sam, who's representing the more accurate version of America when he takes on the mantle. And it's a very interesting way that they've managed to tell the different perceptions of America through these three characters and through who is actively holding the shield. And to your point, then that kind of goes into why Sam has to kind of clean up the image afterwards and be like, but that's not who we are, even though you just watched this happen. Like, we're not all like that, and that's not how I'm going to carry this shield. And I think it's very interesting, especially for a show that came out in 2021. And I think we've talked about this with a couple different shows lately that kind of are incidentally mirroring things that we see over time or repeating kind of the history that we've seen. So it is very interesting, but I think, John really does encapsulate a lot of that, on top of, he's a very interesting character because we do get to see a little bit of them talking about, their time in Afghanistan.
Yep.
And what that looked like. And I don't like John, but his comment about him having his medals for one of the worst days of his life and living with that, I think is also just something that's so interesting to kind of look at from the perspective of our veterans and how our veterans are treated and things of that nature, and mental health. And just, I mean, like, Sam's always opened that conversation as well.
Yeah.
And he also brings this up, as he talks about, I've always had, a group to help support veterans and things of that nature. But I do think it's very interesting because you do kind of look at John from the perspective too. And this is why I do think he becomes a little bit hard as a character to fully hate, because he's always just done what he says is his following orders. And he's living out kind of that story for that. So I think it's so interesting. It really is so interesting to kind of see how on such a high level we're able to kind of break down, especially these three Captain Americas, and kind of just the images they do or don't portray to both Americans and to the bigger world.
Yeah, and you brought up that conversation between John and Lamar in, I guess it's a little cafe, and this was the scene I was referencing earlier because I didn't remember it. But I think that scene is so telling on so many different fronts, and it's also a good segue into talking a little bit about the serum. But this scene, to your point, John talks about their time in Afghanistan and how traumatizing that was. Like, you can clearly see he is still affected by it. Lamar is as well. But he also says another line where he talks about, those things that I got medals for in Afghanistan, very rarely did they feel like the right thing to do. And I think that very much alludes to what you were talking about, how John gets the orders and he executes the orders, right? Regardless of maybe how he feels about them and his morality in relation to the orders. And I think at the end of the day, and we've talked about this, that is ultimately what separates him from Sam and Steve. Sam and Steve are able to see the gray area and understand that life isn't black and white. There isn't a we're the good guys, they're the bad guys. There isn't a these are the orders and they're right, disobeying the orders is wrong. They see kind of they're very good at understanding others' perspectives. That's why we see Sam try to talk Carly down and is succeeding until, of course, John has to ruin it. And so I think that is something that continues to just be reinforced with John, is this idea of he sees everything as so black and white, versus that is not how a Captain America can operate, because Captain America, and if you think about how Steve evolved over time, it didn't just represent America, right? He was an Avenger. He was an Avenger for the world. He saved the world. He didn't just save America. Even in World War II, right? Yes, he was wearing the American flag, but ultimately defeating the Nazis is to the world's benefit, right? And so I think when you're looking at things, John looks at it from an American perspective. Both Sam and Steve are able to look at it from a multinational perspective and understand and empathize with groups that may not be their own. And I think that's where John's weakness as a Captain America shows up. And it also obviously has to do with some of his character, which is played out in the serum. And we'll get to that in a second. But I think that's something that the show continues to show about John.
Well, let's get into the serum, because the serum and the debate around it kind of is an ongoing thing that we have really talked about throughout the show already. And honestly, just the serum as a whole, I think is one of those that like haunts the narrative.
For sure.
Yeah, and it's not even just the show. I mean, again, we always reference it, but like that is what Bruce Banner was trying to recreate and then became the Hulk. Like, we do see this serum definitely haunt the narrative from the very, very early on perspective all the way through. And I think what is so interesting is, well, I have like caveats I need to say and things of all, but like at a base level, when you think about the serum in the eyes of John, he is wrong from the start. I'm not even trying to dish on my guy here. I'm not, but like he is wrong from the start, because he is looking at it as a fact of weapon versus weapon.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't have the proper weapons.
Yep.
And I think, we've seen it throughout the episodes, but then this episode, we really see him. I mean, although let's be real, guys, this guy was kind of tweaking from early on before the serum came in. I don't know what was going on at the beginning of the episode with him.
He was on something.
Like, that comment he makes to Bucky when, mind you, when Bucky pushes him back, he pushes him back with a metal arm. It has nothing to do with Bucky being a Winter Soldier or like being the Winter Soldier, a super soldier. He literally just pushes him back with the bionic arm he has because he was missing an arm, right?
From Wakanda, of all places, one of the most technologically advanced societies in the world.
But he's also literally like he's lucky to have been able to get an arm, but like especially of that caliber. I mean, to your point, the technology behind that is crazy, but like pushing him back with the prosthetic, right? Like from a base level, he at no point shoves him halfway across the room or anything. And John walks up to him tweaking on something, because you could see it in his eyes. And Bucky even points it out later and is like, something's not right with him.
Yeah.
Because he's like, I bet you feel real good with all that serum running through your veins. Sir, are you okay?
He was like obsessed. That's
what
I mean. Like, he was like on focus. He was like, I am evaluating this whole scenario through the lens of the serum. Who's got it? Who doesn't? I'm at a disadvantage.
Correct. And the thing is okay, this is going to be a slight caveat I have to go off about, and this is not the first nor the last time you're going to hear me complain about it. I'm really sick and tired of them acting like Bucky is not a very strong super soldier. It really aggravates me. And it does have to do partially because I love him, but it also has to do with the fact that they talk about the longer you have the serum and what it does and how it settles into your body better. And like, I forget what project we learned that stuff in, but we learn it in one of the many projects we talk about the soldier serum. But like, we like how that's why Steve like was still so strong, stuff, because it's now acclimating to his body and things of that nature. And then like, we've had the debate where Bucky should be stronger theoretically than even Steve, because it's like, well, now he's got a bionic arm too. Like,
Yeah.
and so I'm kind of getting tired of them semi nerfing Bucky because it's annoying. But the reason I bring that up is because he has one of the oldest super soldier serums that exists out there.
Yep.
And he has the trauma that comes along with it.
Yeah.
And so it is very interesting, as you just said, John looks at it from such a black and white perspective of this serum, and you're strong and you did this and oh, like whatever. And it's like, yes, but Bucky also was tortured for 70 years and is, you know, and I guess you could argue they have Bucky holding back because of all that. Whatever. I've seen people say that. Whatever. It's annoying. Let him punch people. Like, he could kill them. Let him do it. But like,
Oh my God.
sorry. It's just like so annoying when we pretend he's not arguably one of the strongest super soldiers. Like, even when he like Loki for a hot sec gets his butt kind of kicked at during the one battle. And then he like, it's like he like remembers to fight. But I'm like, bro, come on. Like, I can't stand when they write him like this. But like, John is just so focused on it that like he can't even him and Bucky would actually get along, I think, if given the opportunity, due to the fact that Bucky was the type of soldier he was even before being the Winter Soldier. But like, I genuinely think the two of them could really have a relationship, which we kind of start to see by the Thunderbolts, like
Yeah.
not in that capacity, but we do start to see them have a relationship. But John is so zeroed in on it. And he feels second to Bucky specifically. And that is a threat he feels from the beginning of like the second we see him.
Yeah.
And then obviously now that the foes all have super soldier serum too, that just almost makes it worse. Because now he feels like he can't even match up to Bucky to fight them. And he even makes the comment against the Dora Milaje. They weren't even super soldiers. No, John, they are the best trained soldiers to exist in the entire world.
Yeah.
Possibly the universe, Loki. I might even go that far. They don't need to be super soldiers.
I don't even think that's far. I think that's just like life. Like,
Yeah.
you literally do not go against the Dora Milaje.
No, and
ever.
they even said that.
And Sam tries to warn him.
Yes.
He's like, dude, I don't think you want to mess with them. Of all the people.
He straight up was like, fight Bucky before you fight them because they're not the one.
Yeah, John, and this is part of what makes him so insufferable in this episode, is that he's so focused on that insecurity that he has, which you were right. He is comparing himself to Bucky, who, other than the villains, are I use villains loosely because, again, the Flag Smashers are quite, you can empathize with them, as we've talked about. But really, I think what changes, I don't even know that John cared that much about Bucky being a super soldier until they found out that the Flag Smashers also were super soldiers.
Yeah, because Bucky was equal.
Well, and he and Lamar rolled up to that truck fight in Germany and was like, I'm Captain America and I'm here and I'm gonna like save the day. And then he got absolutely trounced. Like, the man got destroyed, got taken off the truck and everything. I mean, Lamar almost died then, and we will get to that later because I love Lamar and that really hurt me deeply. But I think that particular fight really set him down this path where he was like, I am inferior in this way. And for someone like John Walker, who is a soldier, who is a white man, he's probably never felt inferior in his entire life. We learned that he was on the football team. He went into the military. All these things that are traditionally, and he excelled in all of them, that are traditionally going to put him in a place of power. And now he finds that the people he's fighting are physically superior to him, and for probably the first time in his life, he feels inferior to someone else. And that sticks with him through every single episode. And then you get to episode 4, where he is just at this point so obsessed with it that he can't even see that his ally having these particular powers is probably a good thing when you're outnumbered from a super soldier perspective. What is it, 5 or 6 to 1? And he can't even see that as a benefit because he's not the one. He is inferior. And so then you see him, obviously, he finds the serum. He doesn't take it right away, but he has that conversation with Lamar, again going back to it in the cafe. And I think this conversation is so telling about how John views himself, because he asks Lamar, would you take it if you had the chance, full well knowing he has every chance. Lamar obviously doesn't know this. And Lamar's like, yeah, of course I would, because Lamar has this optimism. And I think Lamar's a really good dude. I think genuinely he is a stand-up guy. So for him, he actually brings up the idea of the fact that the serum is going to amplify who you are. And for him, there's no qualms in taking it because it's going to amplify his integrity because he has that.
Yeah.
And then you see it click for John where he's like, you're so right, man. I too have the same level of integrity. And that's what, pushes him over the edge to be able to justify taking the serum. But what John doesn't understand is those darker impulses fueled by his ambition, fueled by his envy of those who have the serum. All of that is amplified by the serum, and he doesn't recognize that until much later. And I think that is such an interesting moment in the series. And I like I said, I didn't remember it, and it was something that I was like, wow, this conversation is telling about what John sees right now when he looks in the mirror.
Well, it's also like it's like such a frat bro conversation in its own way, where it's like the one buddy's like, dude, you're such a great person, and the other one's like, yeah, you're so right. Like, I'm awesome. I don't even know why people would say I'm not.
In some ways, it's like drunk girls in a bathroom where it's like, I love your outfit. You look so great. But like the man version of that.
Yeah, it's literally just like like, dude, yeah, you're right. Like, I don't even know why I second guess that I'm not great. Like, and that's genuinely what happened there. And, a lot of respect to Lamar. He does respect his friend.
Yeah.
I mean, they've gone into many battles together. He trusts him. And I'm sure he doesn't really understand this darker impulse within John.
Yeah.
Nor do I think he understands where John has been feeling these emotions about not being good enough right now. Like, he felt it from a high level about being Captain America.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think he understood that, especially with Bucky in the fight. And then to your point, finding out the antagonists now and the people they're going to be fighting are also super soldiers. Him being in this battle and essentially already being at a disadvantage when he's supposed to be the Captain America,
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think that's something that John really highlights enough for Lamar to understand that there is a deep, deep void within John that this is creating and an insecurity. And I like the way you kind of talked about, he probably wasn't really at much of a disadvantage for most of his life. And This is that beginning moment. Because I think even too, Zemo asked Sam, would you take it? No.
And Zemo points it out, no hesitation.
Exactly. And I think it is because at the end of the day, these are two very different types of soldiers who understand their limitations in different aspects. And for Sam, he trusts in his abilities and trusts that he can do what he needs to do without needing to enhance himself in any way.
Right.
John, on the other hand, is watching this happen and knows he's in over his head. And now listen, I will, if I want to sympathize slightly with John, I will at least say Sam has had years to get kind of acclimated to the whole like Avengers thing. He's had many years to fight different battles. And I mean, yeah, androids, aliens, and wizards, but also like, just your typical regular bad guy, people with magic, people who, whatever. he's kind of seen a lot of things.
Yeah.
And he's not the only Avenger who inherently doesn't have like a shtick, like, yeah, he flies, like that's his thing, but he's not the only one who sits here and uses like a suit or anything else to have an ability. Like that's what Ant-Man does. He doesn't Ant-Man out of his suit does nothing. Like we don't have much without any of that technology.
Right.
So I do think maybe there's a little bit of that as well, that I can maybe give John some of that he is in over his head because he's used to fighting foes who are shooting at him, who are driving tanks and things of that nature, and they're doing operations and things of that, versus like now he's fighting foes that are the next level up.
Right.
They are superpowered, they are enhanced. And yeah, you're a very, very small fish in that big pond. So it's like, if I wanted to give him a little bit of like leeway, I'm like, I get it. You were really thrown into this, and this is just way bigger than you thought it was ever going to be.
Well, and you can even see in that fight where Lamar loses his life that Sam, despite not being a super soldier, I mean, he and Lamar are really the only non super soldiers in that fight, right? And yet, and this is, I'm not saying anything against Lamar. This is really comparing John and Sam. Sam is absolutely holding his own sans serum,
Right.
because he is able to understand, to your point, his own strengths, his own abilities, his own, adjust how he uses his tools and his suit and things to give him the advantage against someone who on sheer brute strength should be better off.
Correct.
And it shows that, like, that, to what you're saying, that confidence, that practice really that Sam has at these higher level battles is really suiting him. And then, or benefiting him, is probably a better way to say that. And then you get to the point where Lamar is killed, right? And you see it in John, that moment. And this is like a hard pivot, I realize, but I was already talking about the scene, so we're here. But you see that moment where basically John just stops caring. He does not care anymore. He loses his ability to, just think about what's right and what's wrong, and it's all about vengeance. And I think that's the moment where all of this kind of comes to a head. We've been talking about the serum and how it affects him, and what he thought about himself going into it. But realistically, all of this inferiority that he feels, this void, as you described it, has really made him one straw away from breaking the camel's back, essentially. And it's not just a straw here, it's like the biggest straw. It's his moral compass. And that's a lot of what Lamar acts as his friend. He is tempering him, he is helping him see more clearly, as any good friend should. And he loses that. He loses the person that he trusts most in the world. And after all of this that John has been feeling, that's it. He snaps and he's done. You cannot help him anymore. He is literally gone to the point of no return.
Yeah, I mean, I would have liked to see almost how it would play out if that had never happened.
Right.
Just to see really how John would have settled a little bit more with the serum. This is also almost his like Uncle Ben moment.
Yeah.
It's the big one, right? It's that moment of testing pretty much, and he failed.
Yeah.
It really is quite an interesting pivot at the very end of this episode. And the thing is Sam has put together what he did.
Oh, yeah.
And I was watching, I don't believe Bucky does. Like, he doesn't understand that, because I don't think he was really fighting enough around him in those moments to have realized he took the serum. But they both knew that the John that they knew prior to the serum, let alone with the fact he has the serum, was about to be entirely unhinged.
Oh, yeah.
And the looks on their faces when it happened and they take off because they know John's about to do something crazy, you could just tell that you, like, from the jump, even with them, that you're like, oh my God, he's lost it. And I think it's just very interesting because this is that moment of truth for him. And he, like I said, he fails the test. He fails it completely. And it is interesting because the timing of when he takes the serum is a little unclear. Obviously, he doesn't take it yet when he's having the conversation the night before with Lamar. It's not entirely clear when he takes it. It's also kind of weird because, to be fair, like, this is kind of our first iteration of seeing the serum in a way that you could just take it and move on.
Yeah.
Versus, obviously, we know that a lot more went in with Captain America. It was kind of always implied the same with Bucky.
Yeah.
So, like, this is the first time that we're like, oh, they just kind of insert it and go.
Well, not to mention, and I thought about this too while watching the episode, Steve doesn't fight right away. He is basically like this, what do they call him? The Star Spangled Man or whatever for
Yeah.
months. So he's
Yeah.
never even tested into battle for months with that. While the serum is settling in his system, he's not immediately like going and fighting on the front line. So I think that's another, thing to think about as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean the same with Bucky. From what we've pieced together and been given from his past in the MCU, that's kind of the same vibe. They didn't have him out doing special ops right away. And so I think it is kind of interesting to see how quickly this version of the serum settles in. And you could just see it in his face.
Yeah.
And this is that moment again. John is just scary.
Yeah.
Like, genuinely scary. And it is interesting too when you look at him from across the actual supposed antagonist of the show, because they all have the serum too, and yet none of them are that bad right away.
Right.
And even Carly, like, you could still reason with her and you could see that she's definitely getting a little bit more radical in her ways. But that actually has nothing to me, at least from the perspective I have, that has nothing to do with the serum itself more than it's just general escalation.
When she's being backed into a corner on
Right.
so many
Well, that's what I
different
mean. Like,
fronts.
this is something that I think, serum or not, this would have escalated no matter what.
Right.
We see that in plenty of other Marvel movies where we watch the antagonists begin to escalate their attacks or whatever for XYZ reasons. And so I don't really think the serum is actually negatively affecting her all that much at all. And so it's very interesting because, quite frankly, they could have really taken this show in a strange and like twisted direction if they let John just like go nuts, because he's actually scarier than the actual antagonist.
Oh, for sure. And I think that moment where he realizes that Lamar is no longer alive is just, you get this pit in your stomach, not only because you feel for him, right? Like, this is his best friend, but you know that he is about to do something completely unhinged, untethered, and probably will feel no remorse. And I think that's the scarier part. Like,
Yeah.
you see, we talked about, you both of us, the change in his face. It's that moment of, I literally do not care anymore. You have taken one of the people I love most from me, and therefore you must die. And even to the point where that poor man that he murders is begging for his life, and he's saying, I didn't do it. Everybody in that room knew it was Carly. Everybody saw Carly hit Lamar too hard. Yet John didn't care. John didn't care who he was killing, who he was quote unquote punishing. He just wanted blood. He wanted someone's blood for Lamar's. And that is, I mean, obviously murdering anyone in vengeance is bad, but to then take from try to go tit for tat, which is essentially what he did. You took from me, I'll take from you. I can't kill her, but I can kill you. Is just this complete removal from reality, from humanity, all of it. And that shot too, the one thing I want to say from like a cinematic or cinematography point of view is when everybody realizes what happened to Lamar, the shot almost goes into like a slow-mo, like it's
Yeah.
a very subtle
Yes.
almost slow-mo, and it adds to this building sense of unease, almost like you're in a horror movie, and it's like signaling to you, okay, this is about to get really bad. And I think just even from an aesthetic cinematic point of view, that was just like really well done. And it was something that stuck out to me that I was thinking about when I was watching. I was like, wow, that's well done. That is making me feel things. Like, my brain is picking up on these signals.
Yeah, it gears you up for knowing something horrible is coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's just it's hard because episode 4 is packed with stuff, but those last 5 minutes are really like almost a deciding factor for the episode.
Yeah.
And it does leave you sit there and you're like, oh God.
Yeah.
And it's hard because there is so much else going on. Like, we can't forget there's still another 30 minutes of this episode where there is so much story being told.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're talking about the Flag Smashers and how their messaging is not really that. Like there's a reason a lot of people are following it, and I think Sam and Carly have some interesting conversations around. I mean, Sam even says, "I don't disagree with your messaging, but it's how you're doing it."
Yeah.
And things of that nature. I mean, we have Zemo kind of giving his 2 cents, especially regarding the super soldier thing, which I wish Zemo would have seen John.
Oh my God.
Could you
He would have been like
imagine?
my poster boy for every single thing I've ever said.
Yes. He's literally like, this is exactly what I was trying to always avoid, was somebody exactly like him getting this type of serum.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of interesting. Obviously, we have the Dora Milaje come in. There is just so much happening in this episode that just feeds into this, that by the time we reach the culminating point, you're like, surely more can't happen.
Yeah.
And then you just sit there and like it all happens. And when push comes to shove, the worst of the worst things that could probably happen across the board for many of the characters, plus the Shield, plus the general storyline of where things are going right now, it all happens.
Yeah. I mean, you want to talk about the poop hitting the fan in a short span? That's really it. To your point, it escalates everything. All the tensions are high now because not only has John killed someone with one of the most recognizable symbols ever in the MCU.
And he's also already been named as the Captain America. And that's the thing. That is the point of having people ask for his photograph and his autograph, I should say, as he's abroad.
Yep.
People know who he is. They've made him once again a symbol, regardless of anything else, regardless of actually being in the field. He has been named a symbol of America. And now he's sitting there beyond just the shield itself, but just as, in the entire garb of Captain America, publicly executing someone.
Yeah. It's powerful. I mean, that's really the best way to put it. The symbolism, the messaging behind it, and what it represents. But even beyond John, in terms of like how everything across the board is escalating, you also have Carly, who has now murdered again, right? So we saw her blow up those people in the depot, which she is getting heat for in this episode. And I think that's important to point out as well, because you talked about how people are sympathizing with the message, and that's true. But her escalating their efforts in that way, it does turn some people away, and it does turn some people off. And I think you also, there's an important scene where the Flag Smashers are in an abandoned building, and you see some of her own members giving her the side eye as they're listening to this news segment, because they didn't probably sign up to be murderers, right? And so you see her continuing to escalate. She's now taken more lives. And you have Sharon, who is now even more involved, now is tracking John Walker. You get maybe some hints that, I don't know, I don't want to say you get hints that she's maybe more involved, because that's just hindsight. But you have her you're reminded that she is also a player. And so now, as we get into the last 2 episodes, you're looking at everything at the next level. All the tensions are higher, all the characters have more stakes. You brought Sam's sister in as someone who is being threatened, so now his family is involved. And I think it does a really good job as a middle episode of both paying off what we've seen before, and also really getting us ready for those last 2 episodes to say, all right, you wanted higher stakes, here are your stakes. People are dying, people are getting, both people and symbols. And I think that's, something that the characters are going to have to continue to reckon with in the last 2 episodes. And I'm very excited to get there and talk about all of that.
Well, and there's a reason there was for a long time the infamous episode 4.
Yeah.
And this was one of the largest contributors to the infamous episode 4, because episode 4 of a 6 episode series that Marvel was releasing typically was when literally poop hit the fan.
Yep.
Like anything that could go wrong goes wrong. The big like, oh God moment happens. And to your point of everything you just listed, everything has been escalated. Everything has moved forward. And I mean, even down to the response to Carly bombing the depot. We
Mhm.
hear what the global, what is the Global Reparation Council or something?
Repatriation?
What is it?
I think it's the Global Repatriation Council,
Repatriation.
GRC for short.
Yeah. We hear what they are doing in direct response to her actions,
Yeah.
which is only making her life harder and her messaging harder when they are doing actual legislation now that they are pushing forward on a
And
global level.
expediting.
Yes, exactly. And so it's interesting because you can see everything. These are the moments in the show where if the show's the funnel, you things are starting to really circle the bottom,
Yeah.
and you're like, okay, there's tension now, and now we got to start to figure out like which ones are making it down through that final bit of the funnel, and how is the story going to wrap itself, because we have everything going wrong, and we have every player on the board. I mean, again, Zemo's gone. Like, we don't know where he went. We have a rogue Captain America. We have a power broker still on. We have all the flag smashers still doing their jobs and doing what they're trying to do. I mean, you just every player is it's getting worse and worse, and the tension is increasing, and it's just very interesting in these episode 4s because they really make you sit back after you watch them and you're like, "Oh god."
Well, and they help make or break the show, right? Because how many times have we sat on a show or reviewed a show and been like, wow, this really ratcheted up the tension. Then 5 and 6 didn't pay it off, or 5 and 6 weren't able to wrap up that a specific storyline, or it was rushed, or whatever it might be. So the amount, I like the funnel metaphor that you were saying, because the amount of storytelling that you kind of bring into 5 or 6 through 4 really either sets you up for failure or success. And if I'm remembering correctly, I think we felt that episode 6 here, 5 and 6 here were very strong, that it actually had a really well done, thought out ending, intentional ending, whereas others have been very rushed, or I mean, I don't even want to talk about Secret Invasion, but just complete chaos. The point here being episode 4 sets all of that up. So either you're biting off more than you can chew in episode 4, or you're ratcheting up the tension just enough. You're leaving just enough storylines open to be able to wrap it up, to be able to continue to build upon it successfully or not.
Exactly. And that's really what this episode does. And honestly, I don't remember episode 5 at all,
I don't
which is
either.
kind of exciting
I
because I don't know what
know.
we're getting. Yeah, like I don't know what we're getting into. I don't know where we're going next.
I know. I do remember episode 6, so that is interesting that that episode 5 is bookended by such memorable episodes. But yeah, to your point, I'm excited to kind of dive into that, try to remember as I'm going through what episode 5 is about. I think we've covered kind of the main themes of episode 4, obviously the big moment being the ending, which we have covered quite a bit. But you can make sure that you're following on your podcast platform of choice for future episodes. You can also check out our website, which has the podcast calendar, as well as our Buy Me a Coffee, both of which are linked in the show notes.
You guys can also give us a follow on all of our socials, which are linked in the show notes as well. And join us next week as we take on the infamous episode 5, because we don't remember it. So make sure you guys are coming back and you are watching The Falcon and the Winter Soldier episode 5 as well, so you kind of can get the most out of our replay series here. And as always, Marvel just blew your mind, so let's talk about it.